The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with Sue 𝐬𝐜𝐚𝐫𝐝. This is the show where we talk about everything happening in the world of pop culture. Great guest today. It is the terrific entertainment journalist, Richard Rushfield. He's going to be here. Of course, The Ankler is his big newsletter that everybody in Hollywood absolutely must read every single day. In the meantime, Sue, how you doing?
I'm good.
You ready for the Super Bowl?
I am. It's that week in between. I can't wait to just see it already.
I know. Let's do it. Let's get this thing over. Now, do you have a rooting interest in this year's Super Bowl?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
I do.
And do you want to reveal that right now?
I can reveal it right now. I'm just sick and tired of Kansas City. I want to see somebody else win. So I'm rooting for the Eagles, even though I'm not really an Eagles fan, and I'm kind of pissed that they beat the Rams. But
yes,
you know what? I don't know who can stop Saquon Barkley. I just don't know who's going to stop him. And Travis Kelce really wasn't much of he didn't really do much.
No, he's not really had a great postseason. Yeah.
So you?
So I really rooted for anybody but these two teams. I rooted for the Rams, obviously, Buffalo, Washington. This is the matchup I didn't want because we just saw it 2 years ago. I mean, we just saw this exact same matchup. So I like to see some new blood. Unfortunately, we're not getting that. We're getting Kansas City and Philadelphia again. I am so torn on this. I kind of don't have a rooting. I mean, this is not a hot take. I kind of don't have a rooting interest. I mean, in the case of Kansas City, I understand it would be history, but I think they often benefit from calls. I saw Bill Burr talk about this with Rich Eisen. He says the calls it's not fixed, but the outcome is massaged a little bit, which I think is a good way to put it. Kansas City benefits from a lot of these calls.
Absolutely. I mean, I felt really bad for the Bills. I thought they got robbed on that game. Now, look, you don't know, would they have won if some of those calls didn't happen? But they were egregious calls. I mean, that reception with the ball hitting the ground, I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And I really do think that Josh Allen got the first down. So
I absolutely think so too. He absolutely got the first down. And we talked about this a little bit on the show. Hey, there's a microchip in the ball. Why don't we use that to figure out where the first down is and where the first down is not? We still have two guys with chains and sticks. I mean, we live in this world of AI and technology and all that stuff, and we've got two guys with sticks determining what a first down is. It just seems so ridiculously antiquated to me. Now, are you a Super Bowl commercial person?
yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm excited for the commercials because more often than not, I'm disappointed. I probably like 10% of them.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of them are just kind of a bore.
It's not as big a deal as it used to. The Super Bowl commercials used to be a gigantic deal. And my theory is that what's happened is they release these ads in advance. So you've seen them all. And by the time you get to the actual game, like, for example, I saw an ad, I think it was for Hellmann's Mayonnaise, where Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan reenact the scene from When Harry Met Sally and the I'll have what she's having. It's cool. If I would have seen it new on the game, it would have been cooler than if I saw it a week and a half early because Hellmann's wants some extra bang from the money that they've spent. So I think there's an element of surprise that doesn't exist. Now, are you a go to a party or not go to a party person?
not go to a party.
No?
No. I really don't like watching big sporting events with a lot of people because a lot of people talk, they walk in front of the TV. There's just too many distractions, and especially if it's a game where my team is involved.
Correct.
So
I feel like that too. But in this particular year, because I don't have a strong rooting interest, I am open to a party if somebody wants to invite me. Wide open, invite me to your party. Because
Okay.
I can BS and talk and drink and all that stuff and half pay attention to the game with the best of them. So I'm open to a party. If you throw one, Sue, I'm going to be there.
Okay. I'll let you know.
Sign me up. Last thing, prediction for the game. How will it turn out?
I think Philadelphia is going to win.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
I think Kansas City is going to win the game. I think Kansas City is going to win the game. And I guess part of me is like, well, we really have never seen it before. A team win 3 straight Super Bowls. It's sort of monumentally historic. And it's probably a cool thing that if I had grandchildren, I would tell them about someday. But I don't. Here's the thing. Eagles fans suck. I don't like Eagles fans. I don't think they're nice people. I saw a video of them and the Commanders fans going at it after the game this past week. I'm like, you guys are jerks. Just
Yeah.
a-holes, I think.
I think it's going to be a driving force on both sides to prevent the team from winning 3 in a row and to be the team that wins 3 in a row.
Right.
So that's going to be the fight between them, really. So
Yeah. Well, Super Bowl week. It's not. I mean, honestly, the Rams could have been here. The Rams could have been in New Orleans. They were so damn close, but we'll get them next year. Hey, I want to mention that if you're watching the show on YouTube, hit the like button, leave us a comment or a review or an idea or a Super Bowl prediction. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, subscribe to the show. Big points if you leave us a 5-star rating and a review. So here we go. Our guest today is a longtime entertainment journalist who's written for the LA Times and Gawker and BuzzFeed and Yahoo. In 2017, he launched his newsletter, The 𝐑𝐢𝐜, and it has become must-read for everybody in the entertainment business. Richard Rushfield joins us. Richard, thank you so much for doing this, man. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I'm a huge fan of the 𝐑𝐢𝐜. It's the first thing I read as soon as I get it in my inbox. I'm a huge fan. Terrific writer, opinion maker, truth teller, all that stuff. And I love getting you on the show. So when and how did you actually start the 𝐑𝐢𝐜? What's the history?
Well, it was about 8 years ago, and I had done a tour of working for every website on the internet, I say. I'd worked for big portals like Yahoo. I worked for wacky startups that never went anywhere, and all these places, BuzzFeed, Gawker, all of them, and they were all just sort of chasing clicks in various ways, and I just had this idea that there was this new technology, newsletters, and that was a very old technology that was being revived somehow, and I thought you could do something that you speak straight to the entertainment industry, and I thought there was a real opportunity to talk directly to people who work in the industry in a way that was meaningful, and you weren't trying to get 50 million clicks every week. So I started a little newsletter, emailed it to a dozen friends to start with, and it grew from there.
I would think as a writer, it must be so liberating to not have to be a company man, and just write and speak your mind and not get notes.
I mean, so liberating that I could never go back to that again. It would. I don't know that I could readapt at this point. It's really great, and it's the thing about when you own your own thing, and you all know it in podcasts, what you're sending it directly to your readers or listeners, that your only pressure is just to be as good as you can and just perform. But when you work for a company and you're all sorts of things that you're thinking about, and clicks and whose toes you're stepping on and all this other stuff. And now you just try to do the best job you can, and that's all you think about. It's
So I want to ask you, I want to go back a little bit. Did your run overlap with Nikki Finck's run?
Well, I was an occasional blogger while Nikki was out there, and I clashed with her a bunch of times, particularly in my time at Gawker. But I never knew her in person, but encountered her online there.
Yeah, I had run-ins with Nikki Finck also. I wrote Box Office back in the late, like 2007, 2008, 2009. She got very pissed off because I started posting box office numbers before she could get them out, and it just infuriated her. So I got this long list of, or this long email, sort of bullying, and
She threatened to
you know,
sue you.
she did threaten to sue, all that
was-
kind of stuff. But she's a pretty significant figure in entertainment journalism in Los Angeles. Of course, she's since passed away. What is her legacy, do you think?
I mean, there's the legacy of what she claimed to be and the legacy of what she actually was. What she claimed to be was someone who was outside the system and fearlessly standing up to the powers that be. And, if she had actually been that, I would have been a big supporter of hers. But that was, I think, masking the fact that most of what she did was carrying water for one powerful person against another, and trying to tear them out. I think what lasts is the idea that what she said, that everything has to be raced to the public. Every piece of data has to be raced out there, that we have to report on deal rumors before, the idea of like where we report now on someone is circling a role.
Yes.
And that goes out. And, she was very Trumpian in a way that, like, you could be wrong 1,000 times a day as long as you just keep moving on, just keep throwing stuff out there and keep moving on. And she had her hallmark that got her attention was she had this viciousness and would say really spiteful, nasty things about people. She had threatened to sue constantly, also very Trumpian. I think her influence and her legacy is almost entirely negative.
When you're writing about Hollywood and you're talking about certain systems and people who are in Hollywood, and you're speaking, quite candidly about it, do you get backlash from the industry?
Not as much as I was prepared for. Not as much as you would think. It's I hope I'm not doing it in a way that's like sort of mean and I'm not wishing death on people like Nikki would in her day. But I think people are sensitive about critiques of their performance, and when I'm wrong, I admit it, and when people disagree with them, I'm happy to hear them out. So
You wrote a great series of column stories about how to save the Oscars. Now, I'm a huge Oscars fan. Sue is a really big Oscars fan. I used to be a little kid who stayed up. I think it used to be on Monday night, stayed up late on a Monday night to watch, even when I was like 10, 11 years old. So I love the Oscars. But you had some really interesting suggestions, and one of them is about the calendar. Getting the show moved to late January, early February, as opposed to stretching it all the way to March. Why do you think that's important?
I mean, this is I think the most inexplicable, crazy thing that happens there. It's that the way media moves today. Nobody remembers what happened 3 months ago, or the best of the year lists start appearing at Thanksgiving. And by mid-December, people are kind of done with looking back at the year. Like all the year ed best lists are over by then. And then 3 months later, you're having a show that's looking back on the films of that year. It's like, who is who is, we sit here right now at the end of January. Who is thinking about 2024 and what happened in 2024 anymore? And in 2 months, they're going to say, let's take a look back at 2024. Like you do it while these things are in the conversation. And by having it so far back, they've enabled this army of competitor programs to step into the vacuum and go in where the Oscars should be and take all the oxygen, so that by the time you get to Oscars, you're just it's a subject that the public has long since moved on from, if they were ever interested, and it's a dead horse that has been beaten hard for months, and then the Oscars say, okay, now it's Oscar time, and we're supposed to just all get excited all over again. And I think it's madness, and that they're giving this space to their competitors because they don't see them as competitors. They see themselves as standing alone. But that's
so you're talking about Golden Globes and SAG Awards and Critics' Choice and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think what happens is you get this sense of an inevitability. So somebody wins the SAG Award, the Golden Globe, you're just like, yeah, they're obviously going to win the Oscar. So it takes all of the suspense out of it, I think.
Yeah, and you know what? We live in a digital world. It's not that many people that are voting. It's like they can count. You can count votes pretty quickly on computers if you want to. So I say at midnight on New Year's Eve, your ballots are due. Announce them 3 days later, and then have the voting for a week after that, and in the first week of January have the Oscars, and do. I mean, there's nothing. They say people need the time to see the films. Well, start earlier then, and all these people who are putting out films that want to get Oscar nominations, we'll put them out earlier so that people could see them. If they don't do it, it's just it's madness that they hold it this long.
As far as like the shows in of themselves, like I watch the award shows. Do you feel like the younger generation really can give a shit about award shows? And if there were changes, do you think that maybe new younger blood in the mix making decisions would kind of change it up a little bit?
I mean, the Oscars and the movie awards don't look anything like, I think, something that young people relate to. And they were always old and stodgy. They were old and stodgy when I was young, and many years later, they're even more so. But it looks like, I mean, it looks like not just from a format from another universe, like this idea of a big theater where people are in tuxedos are standing up and applauding while people give speeches thanking their family and everything. It's just not. I mean, I have an affection for it and everything. I like Hollywood history, but it's not going to last.
So how do you connect with that? I mean, millennials and the Zoomers and all these younger generations. How do you go about connecting it without completely reinventing the show? Or is that what needs to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think you do need to completely reinvent the show. I think anything that looks like the current show, and they constantly doing tweaks, and should we have less awards? Should we have more awards? Should we have make the speeches shorter? And it's just that, but the direction of this is clear, and it's impossible to imagine that 10 years from now, anything like significant sized audiences are going to be watching a theatrical show, giving awards to movies that are largely unseen, and it just so they can find some way to do this in private in the streaming world or something, get out of the pressure of ratings, and go for something much smaller and more private, and get back to what Oscars originally was a banquet for the industry. But if they want to do a public show, it's got to be done in a way that is current and dynamic. And one thing that people talk about is one that's much more sort of a salute to filmmaking and the filmmaking arts of the past year, like showcasing effects and stunts and all this stuff. And people focus too much on what's nominated for Best Picture, but there's a lot of other things you can do, and there are a lot of other ways you can incorporate the films of the year.
Yeah, it makes me think of all the changes that were made with baseball within the last few years, because I'm a diehard baseball fan. And I'm somebody who really was against a lot of the change. I mean, I hated when they put lights in Wrigley Field. That's how deep it goes.
Yeah.
But my argument for some of the changes was that they wanted to change it because they felt that younger people were not coming to the games or not enjoying baseball. And I've always felt like, well, if you don't like baseball, you don't like baseball. There's nothing you can do with curling that's going to make me like curling, But some of the changes that they did make, I think work. But I don't know if it really brought in such a broad audience. Steve, you could probably speak more to that because you talk sports every day.
Baseball ratings and revenue were up with the new changes, the various changes that Theo Epstein, who was hired by the commissioner to do. And it shortened the games. Games are now 2 hours and 20 minutes, sometimes even as short as 2 hours. It's become more enjoyable, more fun. There's more action. Now, I don't know if the egos in Hollywood would allow this show to be shorter. I mean, are you right now it's 3.5 hours, even longer at some point. It's an unreasonable, unwieldy amount of time for anybody to spend, but who's willing to sacrifice speeches and who's willing to sacrifice categories and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, they need a wholesale rethinking, and 3 hours of speeches just is not tenable. That's not going to survive. So it's in 2 years, their contract with ABC comes up, and I've heard murmurs that will be the trigger for a kind of wholesale reevaluation of everything this is and what they do. And we'll, I think from everything I've heard, I think the leadership understands all the problems, and it's whether the institution will support major change, we'll see. But I think the problems are understood. They've gone from 40 million viewers at Titanic and 30 million to hovering around 10 million now. So it's clear what direction that's going. If you were at 30 million, now you're at 10 million. What do you think you'll be at in 5 years? Do you think you'll be back at 30, or will you be at 5? And then you're really looking at, like, you got the ratings of an average sitcom rerun. It's
exactly.
And you're not gonna. You're just not gonna be and you're not gonna do what the Oscars were supposed to do, which is promote movies. And I think that you talk about like the films that are nominated, but there's a big gap between the number of people that go to movies a couple times a year and the people who watch the Oscars. Like, there's a lot more people who see movies. So how do you get those people that are moviegoers, that appreciate movies, excited about this show? And I don't think it's just nominating Marvel movies for Best Picture. I think it's having a show that includes the whole face of filmmaking.
I think you get filmmakers who are, like these just certain filmmakers that could just take it over. So you don't have the same, you know what I mean? Who could bring some sort of spark and show it in a different light,
Yeah, I'd imagine if you gave a couple sci-fi labs the chance to run wild, and special effects labs the chance to run wild, and what they could do, and what kind of showcase of their arts they could put on, or stunt performers, another one that comes up, and think what they can do. And like they do these little, like, 45-second clips of here's what sound editing is, but it's not it's very sort of film schooly sort of. It is not a spectacle.
Right, right. So one of the things you wrote was that Hollywood's big time personalities, the elite, don't go to the Oscars as sort of this big communal experience anymore. It's just another PR obligation. How do you fix that?
I mean, I don't know what the mechanism for in the world where I'm the dictator of Hollywood. I say that every year we will announce what the A-list is, who is the A-list of everyone, stars, executives, directors, producers. And if you're on the A-list, you go to the Oscars, whether you're nominated or a presenter or doing anything or just sitting there clapping for your peers. The entire A-list and most of the B-list will be there. Some people have suggested that if you're nominated for something, part of the condition of accepting the nomination is of the next 5 years, you should have to go to 3 of them.
Huh.
That's probably more workable than making me dictator and forcing everyone at gunpoint to go. So, but I think that's a good idea. Everyone that's nominated, the condition of that is that you're going to keep going. And you probably, you were nominated this year, you probably won't be nominated next year. But
Well, it also seems like, how do you make it more fun for these folks that are sometimes not showing? I mean, how do you make it a good night for the business and the industry and for the big stars, right?
well, not having 3 hours of listening to short film directors make speeches is would make it a little more attractive. I mean, in the old days, Jack Nicholson used to go every year. And they'd always do a cut to him and a joke about him sitting there. But he was always there. You always had to stop. You don't have anyone there who's not nominated or presenting. And it's bizarre. It should be, getting to present should be a big deal. It shouldn't be something that they have to twist your arm for and make you do. So get some competitiveness back into that. But I really think if you're a nominee, it should part of the deal with that should be you're coming, or else decline your nomination.
So I want to ask about this year's Oscar race, which I think is like Best Picture. I turn over in my head. I think Emilia Perez is controversial. A lot of people don't like the movie at all. The Brutalist, there's some controversy. Wicked, I even think A Complete Unknown seems to be a movie that everybody could get around. Do you have a sense for which way this is going to go? And more importantly, sort of the politics of the way this is going to go?
I mean, I think any of those 4 that you just mentioned could win. Maybe Anora too.
Yeah.
Maybe Conclave, but it seems that seems to be slipping out of the top tier. I don't think any of them have broken out of the pack. I think all of them have people that really like them. I've talked to people that are furious partisans of all of them. The effects of the weighted ballot. Every time I think I understand it, someone tells me why I'm wrong, and I don't. But I do understand that it to be a lot of people's first choice and then a lot of people's second or third choice and nobody's last choice is that if you're a film that there's a lot of people against you, that's really bad. So I look at that and I feel like the kind of middle choice there is Complete Unknown. And that squeaks through the pack. But if I don't think it would be getting 51% of the votes. I think it would win with 20% of the votes or something like that.
Right.
So it really could be any one of those. If you look just at all these things like the build-up awards and all the other things, like Complete Unknown has the best like sort of statistical package going into this. So
Yeah.
But not Amelia, those others are very close. So
Yeah, I always wonder what the checklist is for why a film should be the best film. And I'm going to give you a crazy analogy. Years ago, I was on Star Search. I did stand-up comedy,
man.
right? And the guy that I was against in the semifinals did cartoon voices. Okay. So he came out with a guitar and did Bugs Bunny and a bunch of stupid cartoon voices, and he beat me. And I thought, well, the category is stand-up comedy. It's about joke telling. It's about your writing. It's about you, your persona on stage. And I felt like it was so unfair that someone like that beat me. So sometimes I look at some of the nominations and I think, like I look at Amelia Perez and I just say, to me, it checks all the boxes. And look, it's personal taste because it is so innovative. It's so different than any other film out there. And the acting is great. And the writing is great. And the story is great. So I wonder if there is some sort of checklist.
You know what? The most simple thing one pundit told me 20 years ago, I always remember it. It's kind of the dumbest rule, but it kind of makes the most sense. It's like they want films that take them on a journey, and I always think about that. It's so kind of obvious, but it really does end up that way. Like like films that really feel like you've gone somewhere, you've done something, you've had this experience with them. It's not just traveling, but sort of an emotional journey or something. And I feel like Amelia Perez does that. I'm not sure if Complete Unknown is a journey in that way. Nora kind of is.
Yeah, that's a journey, sure.
And I haven't seen The Brutalist, but in 3 hours it better be a journey.
Yeah,
so-
better take you somewhere, exactly. And speaking of The Brutalist, I also have not seen it, but you wrote about the controversy with Adrian Brody's accent and I guess Felicity Jones' accent in terms of making it sound more authentically Hungarian. And at least in my mind, I'm like, what would Meryl Streep do? She would have learned that accent and really delivered on it. How much does this hurt Adrian Brody? I almost think it hurts Adrian Brody, and it means Timothée Chalamet is going to win.
I mean, Timothée Chalamet, I mean, he gave a great performance. It was kind of it does a few things. He's making himself. He's a very good-looking young man who made himself uglier, which is something Oscar likes a lot. He doing sort of celebrity impersonation is also Oscar. I mean, that's the number one thing that people get Best Acting pictures for, playing, and he's playing, sort of the boomers, most holy icon also, Bob Dylan. And he sings no less, and that carries a lot. I think he checks. And he's an up and coming star who's really sort of proven himself as a real actor and everything. And he's hot. They also like that. I think he checks all the boxes there. That to me, if there's anything where there's a lock, it would be him.
Right.
Do you think the accent? I'm sorry. So do you think the accent thing hurt Adrian Brody?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I don't feel excitement about that performance in the way that I do, and he's already won one, and it's not. Yeah. I mean, as you say, Meryl Streep would have had an accent specific to this one region of Hungary, and that. But it's. I mean, it just is not a actor's journey in the same way, and these celebrity impersonation ones, performances almost always win. Like it's Oscar's number one,
especially
favorite.
music bios for sure.
Yeah. When you play an iconic star, like that's their favorite thing.
Right.
Vastly.
Right. Well, they were also saying, I think it was the director. I don't know if it was the sound editor, but they were talking about how much money it would have cost to do the voiceover and keep on going back in the studio and trying to get it organically correct without AI. And they were saying how AI saved them, like, it went from like 10 million, it would have been like 50 million or something like that to correct it. And the whole AI is a whole nother story in of itself for me.
Yeah, that doesn't help with your Oscar nomination, knowing oh, they use these computers to save a lot of money on his performance. That's not what they want to hear in the acting race.
Exactly. You cheated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about AI? I know that there've been some shorts made using AI. There's apparently a feature-length film that at some point this year is going to be released in some way that's created by AI. How much of a takeover do you anticipate that AI will have in Hollywood?
I mean, with parts of it like effects and basic production and everything, it's going to be huge. It's a lot of people are going to be displaced by it, but the attitude from the guilds and from others that we have to stop AI, it's like, that's just I've talked to the heads of film schools about it, and I ask them, like, what % of your students are using AI tools in their work, and they say 100%. And if you tell them you can't use AI, it's like saying, like, coming and say, okay, no pencils today.
Right.
They young people want whatever tools they can have, and they want them, and they use them as aids for their imagination, and it takes their imagination. And then telling them you can't use these tools is just like it makes no sense to them. So these people that, for better or worse, these people who think it shouldn't be used or should be banned or something are just having a conversation that is not gonna last.
Yeah. No, I understand that, but I would think that, well, I can't imagine that if you're using AI for special effects, well, then it knocks you out of any kind of award contention. You're not going to get award for special effects if you're using AI, I would think, now.
Well, but I mean, all special effects are using AI. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to some of the bigger filmmakers. They're like, we've been using this stuff for 25 years.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's become this kind of moral panic now. But it's and the tools have gotten a lot better, and sharper. But there was no point where they say, like, 3 years ago, okay, we're switching over to AI. It's just a continuation of there's not films that are based on models anymore for they haven't made those for a long time.
So I want to ask you about the entertainment journalism business because in this town, Todd Boehly and Jay Penske, they own Deadline, Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, plus they own the Golden Globes. That is a lot of, and yeah, exactly. And that's a lot of power concentrated
and
with just a couple of guys.
A24, the film, the company.
The studio, yeah. I mean, is that healthy for the business?
No, it's a monopoly, and it's completely unhealthy, and it has destroyed competitive pressure within this industry, and I don't know why it was allowed. I don't know why people continue to look at it. That they have bought that they have bought this event, that they have this monopoly of all the major publications, and then they bought one of the major events that they cover. It's outrageous. It's totally like you can't imagine in any other field this happening. It's
a lot of power concentrated with just a few people.
It is like the Republican Party itself buying all the major news networks. Like,
Right.
or,
Right.
or the major news networks buying the Republican Party or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well-
how you do that analogy, but it's
Well,
but
it could happen.
it could, but it would be crazy then, and it's crazy. It's crazy now, and I, so the thing about, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, and if they had done all this 10 years ago, and they bought in, they say, well, look, but these papers have gotten so much better, and like under our stewardship, we've really taken them and improved them, and you can see our coverage is much more vigorous, and it's more interesting, and we're serving the readers better. Then you'd say, all right, well, maybe, you know, the monopoly might be wrong, but maybe you've been a monopoly is good. But they haven't. They made them all. They made everything they touch worse, and every one of their publications gets worse every year. And coverage of the industry is terrible, and it's insular, and it's completely in thrall of the powers that it covers, and it's it's a horrible situation, and I don't know why it's allowed.
But how is it allowed, and who is not pushing back that could push back?
Well, if it weren't, there are a few other sources covering the industry, like Media Watchers. You know, you'd like to see the New York Times pointing a finger at this, and or the Wall Street Journal, or the Los Angeles Times, which still exists, amazingly. But none of them take Hollywood seriously. So like doing something serious about Hollywood and pointing fingers is kind of like beneath them in some way. So they never get into it. And but if they were, I mean, you know, we here at the Ankler, of course, call them out every week in various ways. But you know, you don't have others willing to take up that cry there, and it's ridiculous. And you know, for the you can't say that lack of vigorous coverage has made Hollywood better.
Right.
And you look at, this is a period where a real complacency within the studios during a time of turmoil, and you know, I don't think anyone looks back the last 10 years as a golden age for the studios, and you know, maybe having a few more publications calling them to account instead of acting like toadies to them might not be the worst thing.
Well, maybe they
Yeah, and
need like an anti monopoly czar.
You would think so. Unfortunately, I don't think that's coming in the next 4 years. So.
And no, I don't think we're going to see that. But it does make your job even more important, and the Ankler's job even more important, because you're not owned by those guys, and you do offer a different opinion, and you do take a critical view at the industry, and I think have a completely different view. So, I mean, to me, that's what makes what you do so important.
Well, thank you. I mean, we are a scrappy little startup, but hopefully trying to fill in the gaps where we are fortunate in our business model in that the monopoly leaves a lot of things that they don't touch. So that leaves a lot of ground to us.
Well, listen, this has been awesome. I'm again a subscriber, a huge fan of the Ankler. You should definitely check it out. Is the easiest way to get it is just to go to theankler.com?
Theankler.com, yeah, and guide you through all of it.
Yes, awesome,
You,
man.
you know, and I want to say one thing. I saw something on the bottom, because I'm not a subscriber yet, but soon to be, will be, probably right after I get off this. But I saw something that you put there for people who, students or younger people who can't afford it, to contact you, and you can make a deal.
Richard at theankler.com. If you're having hard times, or you're a student or an assistant or whatever, reach out. We'll do it. We also have we also have a kind of young people's version of it called the ladder, which gives you a little sort of summary and piece of the ankler, but also helps connect people with jobs, and they have events, and it's a segment geared for young people. So and it's a much lower price subscription.
Very cool.
So-
Very cool. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, and really appreciate everything that you put. As I mentioned, first thing I do is when I see one of your newsletters, I open it up right away because I want to know what's going on. So congratulations on the ankler, and keep doing the good work out there, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
There you have it, Richard Rushfield. And again, if you don't have the ankler, it'll cost a couple of bucks. But man, if you want to know what's really going on in Hollywood, this is the guy to turn to.
Yeah, it's very refreshing to get a real look and an honest look at anything newsworthy.
Yes,
You know?
yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
thank you to Richard. And again, I'll mention it again. If you want to subscribe, go to theankler.com. Richard's stuff is indispensable to me, and I really appreciate his time. Hey, Sue, it's great seeing you. And
You
we will
too.
see everybody next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.